Hi, welcome back, welcome in. Hamish Taylor here with another important video. But of course I think all my videos are important, otherwise I wouldn't invest time doing them. But this video is all about vitamin D, or at least enough to just get you involved with your own vitamin D status, getting proactive with it throughout the changing seasons of the year. So as usual, here's a disclaimer, none of this is personal advice, but obviously take this information and get proactive with your own vitamin D status. So vitamin D is incredibly important for the body, and it's obviously called a vitamin. But actually, if it was discovered today, it would be called essential prohormone D3 or something like that. And that gives you a much bigger clue as to what it actually does in the body. It is a prohormone. It's also derived from cholesterol, which surprises a lot of people. And of course, lots of people know it as the sunshine vitamin. But, and this is important to remember, the sunshine that's required to make vitamin D on your exposed skin without any sun creams and any other coverings is ultraviolet B light. Not ultraviolet A light, but ultraviolet B. And the ultraviolet B light is important because it is only really available in the UK and at this sort of latitude between about June and July at any sort of intensity. And you do need to expose a sensible amount of your skin to it. And therein lies another problem with vitamin D. Most people, if they've been out in the sun in the day, or even if they use sun creams, almost certainly, they go and have a nice warm shower or soapy bath or such like at the end of the day. And that strips the body of a lot of this pre-vitamin D that the body's made on the surface of the skin, and it hasn't had a chance to be absorbed into you yet. So there are quite a lot of challenges just on getting enough vitamin D into the system. Of course, historically, we would have been outside a lot more and certainly not necessarily at such high latitude. The other thing that makes this even more important to understand your own unique vitamin D is there are two, that I know of anyway, there are probably more, but there are two genetic variabilities which can put you at a disadvantage when trying to convert your own vitamin D from sunshine. I myself have a 40% reduction in that ability, so do I keep a check on my vitamin D status? Absolutely I do. So following on from a video about normal ranges that you'll see from on the previous videos, we want to have a little look at the vitamin D normal ranges. And within the NHS, and there are different units and variability here in the States, it is a little bit different just in the units. But in the UK, we consider anything between 50 and 200 to be okay. But it won't come as a great surprise to know that from a naturopathic and optimum health point of view, notwithstanding your genetics, actually we want this up here. We want it between about 150 and 200. Now what's important with this, if we just bring this onto a vertical scale, with 200 being at the top and 50 being at the bottom, we want to recognize that this is variable. And one of the key things that we do here in clinic and strongly encourage patients to do, because if you don't change your vitamin D supplementation throughout the year, you could be getting too much in the summer and not enough in the winter time. And essentially, we want to have some variability within this top end of the range, this being 150, remember. And so this might be your winter result and this might be your summer result. So one of the ways that we work with this, which again helps to mitigate you doing a genetic test to find out what your genes are, but ultimately we need to know what the functional biochemistry is doing, is to take a standard amount of vitamin D. Now there are some contraindications of vitamin D and you will need to check that with your clinician. But very basically, we would recommend about 4,000 international units per day. And remembering that vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. Vitamin D needs to go in with a meal which has got some fat in it so that your body, your liver, your gallbladder and your bile can all set up the right chemistry to actually absorb this vitamin D. And we want about 4,000 international units a day. And what we would do is then check your bloods in a wintertime environment and a summertime environment over 2 years. So let's say we're in the middle of the winter now, it's currently January 2025. So great time to get your vitamin D checked. Now you can get that checked with a finger prick test, and I'll put a link in the description below about one of the labs that we use for that. And that's a really great way of getting it done, just super easily. And January, February time, great time to get a winter result, and then a summer result would typically be taken in July or August. Now you do that for a winter, a summer, another winter and another summer, and you will adjust over those couple of years your vitamin D supplemental intake if you need it. And so you might end up in the summertime taking one every other day, but in the wintertime you might end up taking 2 a day, and in the equinoctial periods you might take 1 a day, or you might tweak it around a little bit to see what's right for you. And as long as you don't change your location geographically or your job from moving inside to outside or vice versa, then obviously that's going to sit pretty comfortably for a long time. But don't underestimate vitamin D. It is incredibly important. And most people, I hope by now, have worked out and heard of the supplement that we often recommend in conjunction with vitamin D, which is vitamin K2. Also a fat-soluble vitamin, and they're often combined in the same supplement, and they certainly are in our clinic's product range. And it is important that we go for the MK7 version of this, and there is a little bit of misunderstanding around the K2 as opposed to K1 as far as blood clotting, but speak to your clinician about this. Essentially, vitamin D3 needs to go in with K2 to improve its absorption, and it also needs to go in with K2 and magnesium to help keep calcium in the right place so it doesn't end up getting calcified into your arteries. Now that sounds really dramatic, and it is a problem, but this is where we now only recommend up to a 4,000 IU dose in a single capsule, because historically only about 20 years ago we were going up to 50,000 IUs, and that was definitely too high. But that's before we properly understood the relationship that vitamin D has with K2 and also with magnesium. So just a quick recap, what we're trying to do is get your vitamin D status sitting in this zone where it might be a little bit higher, maybe in the 180s, 190s in the summertime, and in possibly the 150s, 160s in the winter time. Obviously if it drops a tiny little bit below, tiny bit higher, that's fine, that's all part of the refining process. Of course, the flatter the better, but don't try and overwork that out. Just as long as it's above 150, that's certainly what you should be aiming for. And if you do find that your blood's, oh yes, off the bottom of the chart here, down here below 50, then there is likely to be a huge step change in your health when you get this status up into the right levels where we want to go. And just remind you, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but do your own research on vitamin D, because there will not be a condition out there that doesn't have an impact, whether it's your mental health, your inflammatory status, your muscle reaction times, whether it is your hormonal health. Type in vitamin D hormonal health, vitamin D energy levels, vitamin D depression or anxiety, and there is a vast amount of evidence out there for you to explore to convince you and other members of your family that this is something that should not be ignored, and that getting the levels up to where they need to be functionally useful is crucial for your health. So I hope that helps. Hope that's another useful video. Obviously a few links down below to follow, and also, yeah, get your bloods checked. And if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.